am live. Let's talk about it. It's Tuesday. Let's shop talk. Well, without further ado, let's dive into this. Hey, welcome back. And if you don't know me by now, I am the guy. My name is Justin, and I worked in the industry over 35 years. And within that 35 years, I've worked in several different bike shops, some other retail applications like Big Five Sporting Goods, Big Back Chain Store, and other places. But basically, I just wanted to have a little live video and feature a bike that I'm working on today and additional topics that come across in the bike shop. So this is your insights of your bike shop. Yeah, a lot of bike shops out there usually have a huge wall that they like to separate the bike mechanics from the sales floor because, well, I'm not sure if they want the bike mechanics to be distracted or vice versa. And then I would say about mid-90s, they decided to open up a portion of the shop to, you guessed it, check in people's bikes. So those individuals, they do work on bikes when they're not busy checking in bikes. But yeah, I wanted to give kind of an insight of what bike shop life is in the back, and kind of a thing to turn on the camera and go and say what we usually talk about, which is mostly nothing about nothing. But in any case, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for tuning in and taking a break from everything else that you might be experiencing. But in any case, we're not going to go down there. We're just going to talk about bikes and bike stuff and bike industry related things. And here we are. All right, thanks. No, I appreciate the comment there. Yeah, it is a great day. It's sunny and it's not freezing cold. I don't live in Antarctica, so it's a good thing. And hey, I'm in my happy place, obviously, working on bike stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to share that journey with you and talk about what I'm working on. So without further ado, let's just start diving into what I'm going to be working on today, maybe. All depends how I get derailed. So a little insight of working in a bike shop and owning your own bike shop and be the only one working in your bike shop. You wear many, many hats. And I get derailed from either orders or somebody stopping by to look at product or somebody dropping off a tune-up, all those kinds of things, right? And in addition to, oh, my website's down or whatever, in all that case. So it's always entertaining, and sometimes not entertaining in a good way, but most of it I just love doing. And hopefully you can see me and it sounds okay. If it sounds weird or the light's not good or whatever, just let me know. Ping me in the comments or put it in the comments below if you're watching this on the rerun. Always trying to improve, and please be patient because I'm a biomechanic that's working YouTube. So, and I do have an age barrier. I'm older in any case. But anyway, testimonial to any of those who want to do a YouTube channel and is over the age of 40, just do it. Just go ahead and do it because, why not? Just do it. Yeah. If you haven't looked at the notes or whatever, I am working on a Klein. First, I want to go over what the hell is a Klein, because a lot of you that have just got into cycling or so forth may not know what a Klein is. And if they're looking in the used market, is it a good bike? And where do they come from? So Klein, his first name is Gary. Gary Klein. He been in the industry from 80s, 90s, 2000s. He did a pretty good run. Klein was not a racer. He's not like Le Mans or Lance Armstrong and all those guys. Klein is an MIT engineer, and he actually got a grant, I believe, if I remember correctly, of blending different alloys to basically coin his own granulate tube process, where those aluminums are really known and really hit the market, and he liked bikes. So his bikes were more of the mountain bike style kind of thing back in the 80s when mountain biking was huge, right? So he was on that bandwagon. His facility was in Chehalis, Washington, which that's where they were making the Kleins. Not all of them, but the first iteration of it. And he put a lot of into it. He was down the street, well, not that close, but to Boeing, where they got Boeing tubing and that kind of alloys and so forth. So he was really known to be as an aluminum alloy guy. And he did a phenomenal job on some really cool Kleins. The emphasis Klein that you will know today is, if you watch Seinfeld, you saw that green Klein in the background. Well, one of these days, if I ever find one of those things, I'm just going to buy it and hang it on the back of my shop, just because it just sticks out. And what amazing product placement, from here to reruns and to now. So you've seen Klein if you watch Seinfeld, but in any case, what was behind the scenes, which they never featured on Seinfeld, which, you know, it's an interesting comedy show. Klein took a lot of processing to the aluminum treatment. Like, a lot of the bikes were one of the earlier ones that actually did internal routing to kind of cut the cable drag and that kind of thing. Which, lo and behold, today, if you saw one of my latest features, they've gone too far with internal cable routing. But in any case, his was not as hard to work on, but still is kind of tricky if you do have one. So keep that in mind. In addition to the wall, like you've heard of double butted, triple butted, and what that means is they take the tube, and when they draw or mill it or whatever, however, they're going to make a thinner wall area, which lightens it up, and that kind of thing. Well, his granulate process is drawn out where they can manipulate the wall thicknesses 365. So they can do multiple areas. He was known for the bottom bracket area to have chain stays where the bottom of the crank, which you can't really see with my hand, which would be square. And then he did a tapering effect, which you'd kind of give it more of a stiffness in the crank, so it accelerates more energy into your drivetrain. So he's done a lot of this high-tech overthinking frames. Great. It was awesome. It was great Kool-Aid then, and it's awesome Kool-Aid now, because you can find some of these on the used market. Not as many as I've seen recently in my neighborhood, which is in the Colorado Front Range area window from Colorado Springs all the way up to Cheyenne, Wyoming. So there's a huge population density I can pull from for looking for used. And I've only seen a couple, and they do get dinged easily because the thickness of the tubing could be not super thin and dainty by any means, but just, you know, they fall over and they hit like your receiver hitch or something like that in your garage, and you got yourself a ding. That can go along with a lot of bikes. So it's not really, you know, thick in a lot of areas. But back to his MIT, made this alloy, had a facility building up bikes in Chehalis, Washington, as a recap on this Klein I'm working on. And then, lo and behold, bam, he got into paints. Super high quality paints. This one here, you'll have to see when I'm done working on it, featuring in that video. I'm going to be specifying just a detailing video on this bike because the paint is phenomenal. It's one of those acetone kind of paints where you look at it, or rainbow, if you will, and when you change the angle of it, it changes color. He had several of those in the mix, and the cost on the paint was absurd back then. So it's one of those things that definitely bolstered the brand. Well, around about mid-90s, Trek was doing a power grab of buying up companies. Le Mans, Gary Fisher, Rolf Wheels, and Gary Klein was one of them. Unfortunately, there was a big shakeup in by the mid-95, 94, 95, where the mountain bike scene kind of dropped to nothing. And Lance really hasn't started winning roads. So road bike, it was kind of like this dead spot, and the economy wasn't the greatest or what have you. And then, you know, a lot of companies have problems. And being in a bike shop, you get these random calls from companies, which was very interesting, that, hey, I'm from Yeti. We're looking to open up dealers. And like, you never gave us a lot a day before, but now you're calling us up, that kind of thing. You get like those calls, and all of a sudden they'd be gone, sold, bought, or whatever. So Schwinn went through the same ordeal, and you've probably heard me talk about that before if you watch any of my stuff. But Klein was one of those. There was kind of acquisition, not in a hostile way. They brought Gary Klein into the mix, as well as Le Mans, as well as Gary Fisher and Rolf for Rolf Wheels, and they kind of picked their brains, because this is the interesting thing. This is a little soapbox storytelling portion where Trek was bonding tubes together for the aluminum frames, like the old Trek 8000s and the old road bikes where they had bonded tubing. They didn't weld bikes, and they were building bikes in Waterloo, Wisconsin. And when they brought Gary Klein on the scene, all lo and behold, the facility changed over to welding frames together, ditching the bonding to some level, and that kind of just revolutionized their process of building bikes in Waterloo. Then they got so big they had two facilities. One was in Chehalis, if I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, please throw a comment below. But there was a big transition of the Trek product line as when they brought on Klein and Le Mans and Gary Fisher, even though they kept those lines separate because they had a little marketing push of trying to put those, sprinkle those companies in other shops and that kind of thing. But in any case, that basically gave a pretty good money pot to those individuals, to like Gary Klein, to research and do more of all these things that have been on the drawing board, needed to be put in practice. So like in the mountain bike, I have one hanging over here. It has a K-ray head tube, which is flared out, so it's be lighter weight, that kind of thing. And all those practices that I just mentioned was being introduced and produced in a mass production-ish level. But as a Trek dealer in the 90s under Parker Bikes, respect old chops, we were a Trek dealer, and we had opportunity of picking up Klein. And then we also carried up Bontrager. Oh yeah, Bontrager is the other one, another big name out there. Bontrager steel frames, mountain bikes, Klein, aluminum high-end, and they were vastly different than the Treks that they were coming out too. So they kept the lines different enough that you didn't feel like you're cooking between each one of them, that kind of thing. Although the OCLV first generation of Le Mans carbon bike that they did back in '96 is basically a Trek OCLV frame painted Le Mans. They found out that didn't work too well, so they canned that like a year or two later and went on to something else. Alrighty, 2010 Madone fully loaded with all the nice. But yeah, Le Mans or Demane, or the Trek Madone. Trek Madone is kind of the iteration of the Trek 5200 OCLV, but the Madone line is actually, that's a pretty good. The 5500 probably has the DA Durace on it. So if it's, well, the 5900 is the one that had the tricky headset, so you should be okay. But the Madone, depending which one is a 5.2 or 5.5, whatever, is a pretty decent bike for sure. But yeah, going back to the Klein had an iteration, and they did some mountain bikes. Well, they always did mountain bike stuff, but they're primarily known for road because of the colors and all that. And they had a huge palette and beautiful, that kind of thing. That's where it really, I really enjoy working on these, just because of that, a lot of the attention to detail. But the funny thing is, and the weird thing is when you ride these, they're just like a Ferrari. They're not very forgiving. So if you do pick one up, keep in mind, if it's not a carbon one or the carbon seat stays, you might want to look into a carbon either seat post, something like one of those specializes cobble gobblers that kind of take up, or red fin or red shift, I forget what it's called, I'm sorry. But one of those red shift, I think it is, they make a little bit of suspension seat post and stem, like kind of more towards the gravel lash world, but that actually will save your keister and your arms a little bit because it is a stiffer ride, but you will go fast. So if you're getting in a competition, you want to be damn quick, look for yourself for a Klein. I mean, they're nice. And the thing is, for the newer ones from like 97 to last batch they built back in 2007 or 2008, whatever it was, they all have the same, they have a lot of the standardized fitting, inch and eighth headsets, 68 millimeter bottom brackets, not press fits or anything weird like that. So you can get a lot of parts still for all of these, which is great. So you can still, if you even just get a frame and fork, you can really blow it up to whatever you want, like the newer Ultegra or what have you, that kind of thing. But in any case, this bike does have a little bit of history, and it does have it's a family bike. Actually, I got this, picked it up for my mother-in-law, and she rode it for a while, and she's at the age to a point now she needs something not as aggressive and squirrely. She had a couple of boo-boo accidents, and she wants something that was a little more stable. So this has not been used for at least over a year or so. Tires are flat, dust, garage dust all over. But it, really hasn't, when I initially did the tune on it, really hasn't had much, it had good riding on it, but she was not very aggressive. And her only demand was, I make sure it goes to a happy home. Well, she's in good hands for that. It is going to go in a happy home. And also, make sure it is teeny. It is a small bike. So it'll be for somebody that's a little shorter. But hey, it's for 700C, it's right on the cusp of, if you go any smaller than this, you would have to probably drop wheel size to like the 650s. I mean, yeah, it's pretty small. And it does have, like, if I can get this up here, the tire clearances to the pedal kind of thing you got to watch out for on smaller bikes. So if you do clipless, you may have to shift that cleat forward to push your foot back, that kind of thing. But the group on this is 105, which is a triple too. So yay for the front derailleurs, for all those who like the multiple gears. You can blow it up as and give it to more gear range, but with that triple, it really gives you a good solid, even with a 1228 in the back or 1128 in the back, it'll give you those climbing hills for sure, for like Colorado that we have here. All right. Do you prefer Trek or Specialized used bikes? That's a good question. Both have a very strong name. As a business perspective, both, I tried, when I was doing a lot more refurbishing and having more bikes to sell. Right now that's slowed down a little bit, but I'll be building my inventory up again through the winter. They both have their pros and cons. I've worked in shops that carried both brands, fortunately. So having that experience, up to about 2006. Before that, Treks a lot of them were made in the United States. So you had that kind of factor and it's just the frame. Just keep that in mind, because the rest of it, the componentry and the wheels and everything else, is usually spec'd and built in China and Taiwan or other places. So that's, as in I like carrying both. And this is where it comes down to fit. And not just like I ride a 58, so all 58 should fit me. Not the case. Because the brand manufacturer, by the geometry of building up that frame, is the only delineation between the different brands that you'll notice. So with the frame geometry for Specialized, fits just a little bit different than a Trek. So when you test ride a Trek and then you test ride Specialized, if you just not look at the names and so forth, just strictly on feel of the ride, that's what you really should be focusing on. But a lot of people get sucked into the marketing Kool-Aid. So some people like the Trek because they're out of Wisconsin. Some people like Specialized because they just love the brand and their marketing is really, really good. Quality of manufacturing, really not that different. The tech they put into it, both are very aggressive. They've been neck and neck at each other for the last, since like mid 90s. That's when they both really hit the scene really hardcore. And that's when the Schwinn and the Raleighs of the past were fading away. So therefore, they've been for the last, 25 years, almost 30 now, where they've been really neck and neck and they've been pushing each other between marketing and building frames and so forth, and pushing that edge of tech to out one another has been huge. So to your original question, what do you prefer? Well, as a tech, both are fine. I mean, you can't go wrong. As the quality of materials they put into it, they're fine. Depending on the years and vintage, it could have been built in the same facility. Merida is the parent company, or not parent, but is the facility that builds the Specialized. Also, they helped them build them out back in 2001 or 2002, so they're partially owned by Merida. And Trek moved out of Merida and went into into a Giant. So the Giants are building the Trek models, and Giant has facilities in Taiwan as well as China. So they're pretty big, as you know, the Giant brand bike too. You got that as well. So when you're looking at those particular brands, for me, for actual fit though, the Specialized fits me a little bit better as my body geometry versus the Trek. Not saying the Trek has bad anything. I've ridden Treks. Obviously, there's Parker bikes back in the day. We were Trek dealers, so I had a Trek 8000, 7900, OX, a couple other ones, and I did have a couple mongooses that we carried there too. But you know, I did ride a lot of Treks, but I did ride recently in the last couple of years a Specialized Roubaix, older one, like a 2007, which is a full carbon with their little Zerx inserts. Nice supple ride. Kind of too soft. I mean, well, for me right now, soft is fine because I really don't go fast or far. It's just enjoying the ride at this point. But so it really depends what kind of riding you were looking to do and what kind of bike. If you're looking at the mountain bike, the tech on those have been very aggressive. But if you're looking at road or gravel, they've been aggressive too. So long-winded answer, both will be fine. But it's really, if you're looking at a used market, you're just looking for something that's in better condition or maintained well and that kind of thing, which might cost you down the road. Componentry mixes is interesting because if you're looking at new, the Trek and the Specialized would have the same group on wheels and so similarities at the same price point. So when you're looking at like a 5200 versus a Roubaix, that kind of thing, they're going to have pretty much, if they were retail about the same, they're going to have pretty much the same stuff on them. So really, it really does come down to the frame and how it rides. Hopefully I answered your question there. Yeah, not the same. It's all about your body and how it fits. It's like shoes. I mean, if you're a runner, right, this is a great analogy. If you're a runner, if you're an avid runner, you're going to fall in a shoe that fits you the best. So you're Saucony's, Nike, New Balance, Brooks, whatever. Your foot's going to fit one of those better. So it really doesn't come down to brand. I mean, yeah, you can drink the Kool-Aid, but I tried New Balance and it doesn't fit as good on my foot as the Saucony does. Or actually Asics is my flavor for a running shoe, which I don't run, but when I was wearing tennis shoes. So therefore, bikes are the same way. So your Giant, your Trek, your Specialized, your Cannondale, even when you get to more of niche lines like Cervelo and Salsa and all those, they're going to have a different fit or feel to them. That's the only thing that delineates the different bikes is the bike frame. So that's a very valid point there. Yeah, there's warranties on, another question on here on warranties. When you're talking about warranties, I'll dive into that a little bit. Back in the day, you know, Trek would have a lifetime warranty, Specialized would have a lifetime warranty. Currently, I don't know exactly what they're considered the warranty. When I left the shop with selling the, drinking the Kool-Aid and working in the shop at the Trek and Specialized dealer here, the warranties is still they were starting to get really muddled. So get details, register that bike with that brand when you buy it new. But when it comes to the used market, no warranties at all. Oh, you don't have the original receipt? Unless it's some catastrophic one and they have to get those things off the market because they got sued and somebody got really hurt, it's not going to happen. So looking at the warranties, if you're looking at that used, if you're buying new, really find out what that warranty is. And lately the warranties is like, they'll give you credit towards your next bike. So you pretty much have to pony up and pay more to get, they just don't sometimes fix it right outright. So keep in mind on those warranties, they're a little more gray. Back in the day in the 90s, they'd either get us a whole bike or a whole frame, sometimes a whole bike, but sometimes it'd be a whole frame, and they credit the shop to do the labor of doing a part swap. They're not doing that anymore today. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're not. They just can't do it anymore. All right. Yep. There's the Kool-Aid. What's really cool, what I'm doing, I don't have brands, not as in Trek and Specialized. I work on all of them. And what's been really an enlightenment for me is bringing in used bikes all through the last 5 years of, riding Kleins, which I've ridden some, but actually rode one for several months. And then a Cannondale, which I never worked in a shop at Cannondale. So I rode a Cannondale and a Holland Titanium and Specialized and some of these other brands that I never would have, a Salsa. And I never ride and for a long duration and get a feel for it. And be more interested, more objective, intricacies of looking at and diving into it, which is cool because it's really a non-biased, well, how does it ride? It rides great, or it doesn't ride so great, or it doesn't ride great for me for this reason, either for fit or what have you. And there's some bikes that have some really funky, cable routing. Like the one that blows me away is, not to knock the new mountain bike generation that just came out, but this huge linkage system. I looked at that and I'm like, that looks like a mess. But that's my old guy talk there. It's like, hey, it probably does great when you're trying to push that 45-pound bike up the hill for grinding. But as a technical perspective, I'm just like, that is adding a whole bunch of problems. So anyway, but yeah, drinking Kool-Aid and not drinking the Kool-Aid anymore, it's very objective now, which is great. So now it's the same thing. I'm not going to bring in products that I don't use. And, if I, brand something or a brand deal, that's going to hopefully work with, like, it's something I already use. It's like, I use this. This is what works for me and that kind of thing. So in any case, what's my best used bike, road bike built up? That's a good question. Going to non-Kool-Aid, the most interesting one, I would say, was a Scott, of all brands. And it was a full carbon Scott with full Durace, and it had race tags on it. So it came from the professional circuit. I tried to look up the number. I couldn't figure it out. That's one. I have two. That was pretty fun. And cleaned that up, got all the Durace on there, shifted great, super fast, super light. It was like 16 pounds. It was nuts. Quick. And the guy that bought it, he lives in South Denver. He did the triple bypass. He hammered it. He brought it back for a tune-up or two, and it's like, it held up. It was a solid bike. That was pretty cool. And the other one was really weird. It was a titanium Fuji, and it also had a race El Salvador or something like that. It was South America tag on it, like it was used for the Olympics, or it was their team. Which I did my best to try to find information on that Fuji titanium, because obviously Fuji didn't make it. That frame was like white labeled out of somewhere else. That's a whole titanium story. We'll get that in a minute here. But yeah, that was probably my other weird weird bike. I'll have to do. I think I did a video. Did I do a video on it? Was I doing videos? I'm not sure if I did the one on the Scout or titanium, but I'll look it up. If I do find it, I'll put it in the description below on a later time. But yeah, very interesting. The craftsmanship was solid. It looked like almost like a Lightspeed, but didn't have Lightspeed stamping on it. Or it could have been the other titanium builder, which was making, they were in Washington or Oregon, and they were building titaniums for Le Mans, Gary Fisher's, and Bontrager back in the day, and some other brands. So it's a very interesting history on titanium. And when that was being built too, titanium was really expensive because it couldn't get that material, because Russia was the main producer of titanium back then. And of course, we still don't yet today have a relationship with them. But now they're being funneled through China, so that titanium is really dropped quite a bit. So in any case, that was probably my two unique ones that I've worked on, but I've worked on a lot of bikes. I was going through my library of photos, and I'm like, holy crap, I've worked on a lot of bikes in the last 4 years. A lot of different ones all over. I should make a little feature video on that at some point. But in any case, back to the Klein here. Oh yeah, titanium. Let's talk about titanium for a split second. Since the manufacturers, even to today, manufacturer like Trek, if they had a titanium bike, was built by another company. So even in the case, and if you're being built over in Taiwan, it's not the Merida or Giant, it'd be another sub company that builds those titanium frames. So when you're looking at companies in states or elsewhere, really small, there is a titanium builder here in Colorado in Fort Collins called Black Sheep, and he does custom builds of frames and parts, and pretty cool guy. I don't remember meeting him personally. I've been around here for a good 20 years. I'm not sure if I met him at any time directly, but I know other people that are close that I know that have met him, and he seems like a pretty cool guy. So Black Sheep, titanium, and he's went to the Made show and a couple other ones. So pretty decent guy. There's another company in Loveland, which is kind of weird. This is interesting. It's Unicorn Cycles, which is they make titanium. And I reached out to them, like, oh, I didn't know they made, had a facility here. And it's like, hey, can I go see your shop and so forth? Turns out, and there's several companies like this, so keep that in mind, that he doesn't build titanium bikes. He contracts a company in China or Taiwan to white label the titanium frames for him. So he technically does make titanium bikes, but he doesn't make them here. It's not, he's just basically kind of a white label wholesaler brand. And there's a few companies out there like that, keep in mind. There's one, Rodeo's one here in Colorado, which I just learned. I think they make some of the steel frames here, but the titaniums are made overseas. So look in those companies, kind of research, that kind of thing, contact them. Do you make those frames here? Or in your facility, or are they being produced somewhere else and what have you, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of history to that kind of weirdness, and that's always been the case. So going back to this Klein, I will be doing some detailing on it. It does have the select paired spoke wheels, which I'll really clean and inspect, because the paired spoked wheels, as you may have seen behind me, they crack around the rim on the drive side of the rear wheel on a lot of them. So the one select I did get recently and pulled it off of a bike. I think it's this guy. It has, it's like once you clean all the dirt off, there's 6 to 8 cracks right by the spoke nipple here. And this one was pretty prominent. According to my buddy John, which worked at Trek, he says they all fail. Some are in a little better shape, they'll last a bit longer. I found them kind of obvious, but maybe not obvious. The bigger frames where those wheels came off of would have more cracks or damaged ones than smaller bikes. I think it's just due to the size of the rider. So, sorry. So that might be, and they did make a newer version where they did beef up the rim. They have a little bit different logoing than the current ones on these, or not current, but what have you. But 105 components here on this guy. It's a workhorse. I've ridden on a lot of 105 bikes, and it's when you look at trickle down tech from the Durace down, it's really debugged and it works solid. It's the affordable person's bike componentry. Even though the 105 bikes now today are still $3,000 to $5,000, I don't know how that fits in that works, but when you're looking at older used, 105 is solid. You don't have to stray away from it whatsoever. It works, performs almost as good as Ultegra, sometimes better in a sense, because they worked out those kind of bugs, that kind of thing. Caliper brakes, rim brakes, God, I love those rim brakes. Not to say anything bad about discs, but I don't really think you need to have them on road bikes, but that's my personal opinion. All right, and this does have a Ritchie fork, which is not the OEM fork that came off of this. So something happened to the fork from originally. I think they stamped it Icon kind of thing, or maybe it was a Bond Chugger, but any case. But yeah, it's going to be pretty solid. The tech on this frame, like I said, with a granulate tube. This was made in, I think this is when it was switched over to Waterloo, Wisconsin. And you can tell they'll have a stamp on the ones that were made in Chehalis. Oh, this one is Chehalis made. So they did keep that Chehalis plant under the Trek umbrella for, I think, 2 to 3 years. So they did make Kleins out of that plant, as well as they did some of the Bontrager steel mountain bikes for about a year until they moved it all over to Waterloo, Wisconsin. So this one was a Washington built one. It'll be a big silver tag sticker, and it says Made in USA, and it'll say Washington or Chehalis, Washington, that kind of thing. That's a clean chain for older bikes. Oh, okay. The question on this is cleaning chains. What you're probably seeing in the crock pot, the quote is basically this: what's the best way to clean a chain for an older bike, or for the older bikes? Well, older or newer, the chains are the chains. What you mainly want to do is inspect for rust or anything like that. I see mechanics on YouTube cleaning with using a crock pot. Well, the crock pots have been used actually for waxing, what I've seen so far. They could use the crock pot to just basically as a container for a heating element to warm up that solution. Ultrasonic cleaner I have in the back corner over here has been a game changer for us mechanics in the last 10 years. Reason being is ultrasonic cleaning has, it basically makes micro bubbles and micro explosions to kind of blow off any grit and grime. That's where the ultrasonic cleaning is. But the big kick piece is it has a heating element to it. So you can get that water. I run mine at close to 50 Celsius, and that gets enough heating of the liquid to really shed a lot of that contaminants off and all those micro linkages. It's great for freaking shifters because that you can't really get in there. And what that does is kind of breaks down between the heat and all that, and then you flush it out with hot water. It really brings some of these shifters back to life. So back to the chain. You take the chain off. You can pre-treat it, pre-spray it with either carb cleaner, brake cleaner, or you can use the industry White Lightning Clean Streak, which is very similar. And that kind of helps soften up any of that built up, caked up stuff because chains can get super, super, super messy. And then you use the ultrasonic cleaner and use that heat on it. Instead of spending like the $30 on a crock pot that you're just going to dedicate it in your shop, I'd buy just a small ultrasonic cleaner from like Viver or Crewworks. I'll have links on my page for that. And you can just do chains, cassettes on that, and also jewelry and, all sorts of things. And then you can, clean your chain that way and really flush it. It does 5-minute cycles, so you can change that time. I just do 5 minutes at a time to kind of, see how it's behaving and cleaning. And then it gets about 15. So, and another trick is too, with the main tank of the liquid in there, I do dilute it from 1 part simple green with 6 to 7 parts water for all the regular parts, so it doesn't eat the decaling and all that kind of stuff off of the, or logoing off of the parts. But for the chain and cassettes, I go nuclear. I put it in either a bag or a jar, and you put straight simple green in there, and you put it in there, and then you run it a couple times and massage the bag and kind of get it to break up. That usually cuts out all the gunk on a used chain. And if you're looking at a new chain, here is interesting bit about new chains. New chains, this is a stiff one, right? New chains have basically packing grease on it. It does work okay as a shifting performance to some level, but out of the box, when you're talking out of the box, like right out of the box, it has the Connex is really sticky, as well as Shimano. I think some of the Shimanos even smell like gasoline. Kind of weird. But in any case, technically what you're supposed to do is clean that stuff off to use your higher performance lube if you're using Finish Line or any of the drip lubes, right? They're out there. What was it? Rock and Road. That's the one I use. It's gold Rock and Road. I've been using. It has a little bit of light Teflon in there. It really doesn't cake up as bad, that kind of thing. And the other biggest flavor that's been coming out is waxing your chains. And that's where you've been probably seeing that crock pot is they clean the chain and get all the either the used gunk off of it or the new packing grease off of it, and then they put it in the crock pot with that wax. And when I have a little wax warmer right back here. You can get these for like 40 bucks for a two pot. That's the same waxer that you do when you wax your bits. But it does perfect because it has a digital scale on there, or a digital display, and you can warm up the wax to whatever temperature you're doing. So looking at the wax chains or cleaning the older chains, regardless of either or, you want to look in the linkages in between the rollers. And that's where your cogs and your teeth are going to roll up against. You want to make sure those are clean, rust-free, none of those contaminants. And if you do lube on that, you want to lube in those roller points. And the wax has become a case where you don't have to re-lube it for every other ride. You ride it until it starts making a little bit of noise, and you can refresh it. I got a video series on wax chains, so I don't have to go too much into that. You can look up in my library on those. And you see I have a little pile of wax. So I do pre-wax chains for sale. So I've gone into the Connex line. We'll get some more SRAM chains. Mainly the SRAMs I've been working with just as a test to see. Basically they're like 20 bucks over retail. So you're basically paying for just the waxing of it. But it's already pre-waxed, so you don't have to do all that hot mess to try and get it stripped. And when you do re-wax, it's a lot simpler. Got a video on that too. But in any case, back to, you want to inspect that chain. And how do you inspect that chain is use a chain gauge or a chain checker, which is this guy here. There's several different ones out there. They're not usually expensive. 10 to 15 bucks is all you really need to pay. And that way what you're doing is, you're checking, you put this one as to do to 2 pins, and you're just checking the actual pre-stretch of it. And once it hits 0.5, then you're at the point where you need to start replacing that chain. So that's probably the more important part before you go through all the cleaning, is check it first to see if it's, okay, stretching. I got verbally abused with somebody saying it doesn't stretch. Well, technically it doesn't stretch. These little rollers and the pins on the inside, they kind of compress, get pushed out, so the chain elongates over a lot of riding. What that elongation does with those rollers, since they pull out a little bit further on the more used chain, will start curving the cassette and start making the little gears in the back turn into little shark teeth. And once they become shark teeth, when you put a new chain on this, it's not gonna match up. They don't play well. And all of a sudden you're skipping. So chain reaction video. Check below. I feel like I'm plugging all my videos I've already talked about. But anyway, that'll give you more detail of chain waxing. But the cleaning is pretty important. You want to get all that stuff off before you put any kind of lube, even if it's just WD-40 drip lube for bike. That is. Any case, don't use regular WD-40, but the WD-40 bike is formulated for bikes and for wear and tear. And also how you apply it, light and polite, wipe off the excess, that kind of thing for the drip lubes, and for the wax is the shedding process and that kind of thing. So great question. Thank you for making me go down that rabbit hole. In any case, it's when you wax a chain, it's super stiff. I shed it, and then you first 5 miles, you want to take it for a light and polite ride. Don't force those gears, but once you hit that shed point where the wax becomes super smooth, it becomes super quiet and super fast and super, it also prevents those parts from wearing out. So I will be featuring more videos on the Connex chains in detail. It's some pretty cool stuff. It's German steel. I mean, it's really cool stuff. Really, really cool stuff. In any case, that's what we're talking about, the chain parts, and I will check that chain too. I'm pretty sure she's not heavy at all, so I'm sure, and not a very aggressive rider, so I'm pretty sure it probably hasn't stretched. But if it did, I'm gonna I'll put on a new chain. That's first when your first wear points. Oh yeah, maybe it's a little bit. First wear points on a bike, besides your tires and your grips, is your chain. So keep that in mind when you're working on stuff like that. And when you take your bike to any shop to have the service rider, they're gonna check that chain, and probably 9 times out of 10 they're gonna go, oh, you need a new chain, even though it's close to. But in any case, all depends on the shop you take your stuff to. But yeah, that kind of thing. But the crock pot, I mean, you can do it. Basically, they're doing the heating element. That's what they're trying to do for cleaning that up. Next question I got on here is, what's my thoughts and feelings about SRAM versus Shimano componentry? Chin's popping off. Okay, so Shimano and SRAM. Yeah, there's a huge. Okay, Shimano is big. Everybody knows what Shimano, and they've been around for a long time. And they're usually the strongest or the stronger componentry line for a long time. Diacompi, Sagino, Campanolo, all those other brands have tried to at some point kind of cut into the market. Like 1 or 2 years we had Campy componentry on Treks as an OEM, which was kind of cool. Then they'd shake out or whatever. The Shimano's a little more back then. When you're looking, let's break this down to decades, okay? Suntour is the other one. Yeah, okay. Start off like in the 80s. Suntour and Shimano. They both had decent stuff. Suntour had some really cool leveraging and tech that they were putting into their things that they were coming up. So between the 80s, the Shimano probably was a little better on the higher end stuff, but in the mid-range stuff, the Suntour was really well. Going into the 90s, Suntour for your mid-range bikes was still there, but they got in bed with Diacomp brakes, which were horrible because the Suntour only made the drivetrain and the pieced out. Then you had the Diacomp for brakes, which I remember on the diametric Mongooses, the damn things would squeal out of the box. I mean, it was just horrible. But early 90s, that's what you pretty much had. Campanolo has always been there, but mostly a road componentry line, right? So it all depends what you're looking at. And you just got yourself a loaded question here that you can get a long answer in a history lesson. So right in the middle of the 90s, Grip Shift came out. Yeah, Grip Shift was his own company, and then they were purchased by SRAM, and SRAM now owns, well, besides Grip Shift, Avid was the brake portion of it. RockShox is another portion, Zip Wheels. So they were one of those conglomerate component brands under one house, and they're actually down in the Springs, and one of these days I'm going to go and bother the hell out of them when I get a chance. But yeah, so over the iteration of time, then the SRAM chains were like, hey, we got this chain that you can use on Shimano and Campy. And the price point's a little bit better. And we got this fancy little thing called a Power Link. That's probably one of the biggest things that we saw as a mechanic, like those Power Links instead of those push pin through things. Then you had different sizes and they all cost. You always drop them on the damn floor or they break off and whatever. Not the greatest solution. And the Quick Link, Power Link, Conic Link, and all those have like taken over on the drivetrain portion of it. So you got your 90s where that kind of really bolstered it. Then boom, you're looking into the 2000s where SRAM came out with their own road line where you had the mountain end road with that kind of one lever shifter kind of thing. And those were pretty good, but if you're looking at used in the 90s, look for the upper end stuff. And that shifting style, you either love it or hate it too. So test drive that bike, and if you don't like that kind of shifting, it's gonna drive you nuts, that kind of thing. That's what I found. It works pretty decent. It sounds rough when it works, but it seems to work okay. And even on the older stuff that I worked on, it does take up the test of time. But I'm gonna go out on a big limb on this one. SRAM beat the pants off of the Shimano electronic shifting. That's if you want to get into electronic shifting. You may think, well, it has multiple batteries versus one battery. And some people just don't like the battery concept at all. But unfortunately, in our era and where the manufacturing is going for the most upper end, mid-range componentry, they're all going to electronic shifting. They're just doubling down on it. Microshift and a couple other companies are kind of filling in for the lower end or mid-range stuff, or if you want mechanical shifting. So I would say Shimano was doing a little bit better in the early 2000s over the mechanical shifters, but when it switched over to the electronic E-tab versus the Di2, I think I've worked with both, and I think the SRAM has an edge on it, and they copyrighted it, and so the Shimano can't do that same thing. And then Shimano has all these cable stills, the junction boxes, and all that jazz, which when you look at it as a mechanic, that's a whole bunch of extra shit we have to deal with. But not as bad as some internal routing that you do on some tri-bikes or funky geometries or overly engineered frames and that kind of thing. So it all depends on your vintage. So hopefully that answers your question to some level, because if you're looking in the 2000s, I'd probably lean a little more towards Shimano, like the 9-speed, 10-speed stuff, just because some people don't like those shifters from SRAM. But when you're looking towards the electronic shifting, I'd probably go towards the SRAM part, because you can battery pack it up, which seems to be pretty decent, and it gets rid of all cables completely. So you don't have any, if you get a super aero frame bike, you don't have to worry about it, that kind of thing. And they shift really well. And they all have programmable pieces and components. As in wear factors, they're all going to probably about wear out the same. Longevity of them, yeah, it's still on the fence, but Di2 seems to be holding up pretty well, so I'm sure the SRAM will do the well. What's the next iteration of it? They're always adding more gears and something, right? But in any case, I would look for more of the wireless braking. That'll be the next one to come down the line. I'm sure I've seen some prototypes out there, have been very intriguing, and that's probably get rid of all of those, and you don't have to bleed the brakes whatsoever. That gets rid of another whole layer of specialty tools and experience that you'll have to work on your own bike, which they've, I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, as in building bikes for production, they went down this rabbit hole of like, we want to make sure that the customer can't work on their own shit. That's what it basically comes down to. It got overcomplicated on the era of we're trying to outbeat the competition by super internal routing and all that crazy jazz. More I work on some of this stuff, I'm like, man, I'm really more of a traditionalist. Like 95% of the cyclists out there don't need an internal routed aero frame. They don't. They just need a bike that works and shifts and goes fast. And they built those in the 2000s and they work great. And you can pick up a used one and have less headaches and go just as fast, or blow the doors off of anybody on those super fancy bikes. Gravel is a different story, but when you're looking at road, absolutely. Mountain bikes, well, mountain bikes are kind of like those, it's like tech warfare. I mean, they're all just trying to come up with a new pivot or linkage or geometry or suspension and all that. All those things have wear points, and you're talking about aggressive off-road riding. Well, when you look at the used, man, you want to buy that from either somebody that's never ridden it off-road, or it's been vetted from a shop that's actually refurbished it and it has some warranties behind it through the shop. 60-day, 90-day warranty, that kind of thing. Because you can have a whole expensive can of worms on your hands on a used mountain bike. So there lies, I don't do a lot of used mountain bikes as a used refurbishing person, but there is companies that do that. So in any case, so yeah, back to the Shimano. They both made great stuff over the period of time. Campy has been sprinkled in there over a period of time here and there. Some people are just total campy enthusiasts. That's great. It's great stuff. It shifts well. It works great. You take it all apart, put it back together. It has some really cool factor. But once it goes to shit, it goes bad. It's like, it does great and it's a fail point. Then you have to either replace it, parts inside or what have you. But it is an interesting thing. And also the stuff is pretty. It's some pretty stuff. I mean, they came out with a gold series in the 90s, I think it was. All those gold plated. I mean, not gold, but like gold coloring. Well, maybe it was gold, how much they charged for it. But it was pretty. I mean, you put that on a traditionalist frame with all the luggings and all that. Oh, it's beautiful. I don't think you'd ever want to ride it. Just sits on the wall and shows, glittering gold the whole time. But yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, So for me, for working on refurbishing bikes for the 10, 15 years, Ultegra 105 from Shimano works really well. The Apex and what's the one above it? Whatever, there's Apex is probably the lowest I'd go. Then they have another model above that for the SRAM that works pretty decent. So, and again, it's really just the shifting style. Some people like the 2 levers versus just the 1 lever going up and down. So if you don't mind, you don't mind. I've had customers that have had one of each, and they get really confused when they ride their bikes. Like, which bike am I riding? The one with the 2 levers or the 1? But after the first mile, you're good. But yeah, warranties on componentry, that's another thing too. There's a warranty question or statement on warranties from the manufacturer. That only covers the frame, sometimes the fork, but mostly just the frame. All the other stuff, the componentry, when it's new, all the rest of it usually has 1 or 2 years. And once that 2-year drops, if it doesn't have a recall, it's your baby to pay for to fix, including like these wheels. I remember when these wheels came out, the Bontrager with the paired spokes with the cracks, they didn't start showing till like the year after they were being used. And we did recall, or not recall, we did warranty several of them before the expiration. But once that expiration date, done. They're not gonna, even though it was an issue, it didn't get to a point where they issued a recall. So keep in mind, there's all those kind of little part things out there, and I was in the service department realm for a good chunk of that. So it's kind of like I've seen or know what to look for on some of those, but mainly for the Trek product. But then again, the Shimano and the Shimano current recall and their older 11-speed cranks, Ultegra and Dura-Ace, do get those inspected. Look up that link, make sure those are not failing on you. But once that's good though for a recall, because if it does fail from here on out at any time, you're gonna get a new crank. So look at it that way, like, oh, well, if it does fail, I'll get a new crank. And what you do is you get a 12-speed crank with 11-speed modified chain rings. Anyway, whatever. Any case. Anyway, Klein, coolest bike, mountain, road. They never made a cyclocross. I would buy one of those cyclocross bikes if they did. I've seen a couple of videos of people taking a mountain bike and converting to cyclocross, but the B27, 26B, or 650B, I'm sorry, 650B wheels instead of 700C because of the clearance and all that, and put on a fork with that. Yeah. So comment here, I broke my new Bontrager wheels within a week, upgraded to Mavic rims, no problems after the change. Yeah, there's Mavic in the used is pretty good. For most part, I don't know if I still have my wheel floating. They did make a super high-end one, the SRAM Elite, and the front head, the front hub had a carbon sleeve over that part. The back part had the weird, funky, like super thick spokes, and it didn't have traditional spoke nipples. It threaded into the rim. The rims cracked on those too, which I had one. The rim didn't, well, they had cracks, but the spoke broke. I don't know where I did it with the wheel. But anyway, I probably have 1 or 2 floating around in my wheel of death. But in any case, but for the most part, if you're looking at used and it's a SRAM set, a wheel set, and as long as they're true, they're pretty decent. The free hub bodies, they do loosen up a little bit, and it's because of these little shims. They use like a Teflon shim that's on that free hub body. I believe the guy still makes these as an aftermarket, not OEM, but aftermarket on eBay. That's where I found this, and it comes with a little piece to smash it in there with a bearing. I don't think the kits were too expensive, but it refreshes that free hub body for the Mavic wheels, and it's pretty easy. You don't have to use too many tools. I do have a video in my library of that too, if you want to check that out. But other than that, for that Mavic wheel, that's what I would only have to be concerned about, is those just loosens up a little bit inside there. And when you do put it back together, use mineral oil. for the poles to catch and so forth. You don't want anything thicker in there than that. And it has actually skateboard style bearings, your sealed ABEC bearings, that kind of thing in there. So those are good stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing. But all right, well, about an hour into it. So I want to go over the latest topics. Industry, because that's what we usually do in the shop. We talk about, oh, did you hear about such and such company doing such thing and doing something weird on that? Well, yeah, there's always happening. But what's very interesting, I've had a couple of those I had a clickbait guy reach out and he was like, yeah, industry news stuff are going to run out. I have to like figure out something to do, because he capitalized building up his channel, basically just talking about the industry, not knowing that he's not been in industry long enough. Because when you've been in it for 35 years like me, there's always something going on. Every day, every week, there's some story of some sort. So I just released a video yesterday, just a topic, as the wheel turns, so the days are rides, dropped yesterday. It's basically the Pros Closet is back. If you don't know the Pros Closet, if you're in the industry, cycling world, that was one of the bigger used platforms out there that's refurbished and sold used bikes, and they've been doing it for a long time. They borrowed a lot of money and they crashed and burned through this whiplash after COVID. So unfortunately, and they were in my neck of the woods. They were like an hour away from me. I mean, they weren't too far. I checked out the facility. I understand there was, and they just did too much high end. And there's a lot of different caveat pieces to this. But during the height of COVID, of course, they were doing really well, but they also took a huge like 40 million or something like that. I think over the course of the whole time, they did up to 90 million of investor money, which at some point those investors are going to want their money back. But they did just build this beautiful facility, and they did a huge promotion with that money. So you saw them advertise on the Tour de France, which is like the Super Bowl of cycling, and other places of such. And they were huge. They did really well. Then all of a sudden, the market on all of us took a complete dive, and then we're dealing with this whiplash effect of when bigger companies like that, if they don't have a clear plan of action of how to deal with that when it hits, they're going to be upside down quickly, not knowing what they're doing. And that's what happened to them. It also happened to Colorado Cyclists, Planet Cyclery, and also across the pond, Wiggle, which owned Virtus, Nuke Proof, and some other various ones. So this is like this chaos thing we've been going through. And what I've been seeing this year specifically, all of a sudden I bought from Planet Cycler quite a bit because they were close to me. They were in Golden, Colorado, Colorado Cyclists. Obviously, they're in Colorado, and I can get chains and parts from them pretty quickly. Then all of a sudden, lo and behold, after they went under, I got an email from Planet Cyclery. Well, somebody bought their naming rights, the digital naming rights, like their website, the mailing list, and all that. Basically, what it is Cambria Cycle, which has been around for a long time in California. Basically skinned their Cambria, and then it'll open up with that particular one that helped them out quite a bit during the article on Bicycle Retailer. You can read that. They were more mountain orientated company, Cambria, but Planet Cyclery was more of a mix, and Colorado Cyclists is more roady. So they were able to pick up two other markets, that kind of thing, so their mailing list didn't cross over too much. So in that perspective, it was a good move for them. Now they're actually going to branch in those markets that already pre-existed. Good play on them. Is it the same company? No, but look at the prices, they're pretty good. I mean, 8-speed SRAM 830 PC 830 for like $8. Not bad for a chain for $8. I mean, it's not the greatest chain, but you just need a chain. It's a good way to go. But looking at the Pros Closet, it's a different way than that, though. It's not just being skinned over a pre-existing company. The investment company that purchased the naming rights and the company and all, the website and every mailing list and all that, Not the facility. That went to auction. The facility's gone. All the parts are gone. All the employees are gone. They brought on two employees, former upper management. They've been with the company for like 15 years prior to the closing of it. And they're rebooting the company essentially, basically from scratch. Essentially, they have to look for another building, get equipment again, and the company, the investment company, only bought just like the website and didn't buy any hard stuff. It was just the website, mailing lists, and these two guys are going to work for them and to rebuild the pros closet, hopefully with their name and their purchasing portion now of buying used bikes. So we'll see how or what direction they'll try to shift. They're going to try to work with partnerships with bike shops and also manufacturers for overstocked items or trade-ins or whatever, that kind of thing. So they've had some good things with the pros closet. A lot of people have naysayers out there like, oh, they're undercut me in that. But they were doing some other things that were good for bike shops, helping move used product that doesn't mix well with theirs out of their shop, gave them opportunities. Anyway, it was good practices for that. They're hoping not to step on any independent bike dealers' toes as well as manufacturers' toes and try to fill the niche that was laid vacant since they went under. So hopefully they can actually revamp it to be a little bit more warm hug, give you a good product, refurbished, used products, especially mountain bikes, e-bikes, those things you really want to buy being refurbished, gone through by tech. Buying those from third party might be risky. So on the e-bike portion of it, you got batteries and motors. Those could be very costly if you don't get a right buy. Or when you're looking at suspension, like I touched on that before, suspension bikes, the suspension alone could be pretty expensive or outdated. So if you're buying it from a shop or a company that refurbishes and has a guarantee behind it, that's the way you want to go. But in any case, they're going to be reboot. They just relaunched the website yesterday. So, and I didn't see any product on there. So it's going to be a while. It's going to be 3 or 4 months. And the article said they were going to try to help or try to cultivate some of the employees that they laid off initially to bring them back to the Pros Closet name. But it's owned by another company now. And they have nothing in their portfolio of any cycling at all. So this is very interesting because the investment company has nothing in the cycling realm at all existing. So it's a very interesting read. Go to the bicycleretailer.com and you'll be able to find the article there. So that really was the latest industry tricky bit news on that. I'm going to check and see if anybody's chiming in on that. Nope, not yet. So other things that I've seen, which alludes to another interesting topic that they brought up, is Yamaha's ending its e-bike sales. Okay, Yamaha, really look into their, first thing, Yamaha had e-bikes? That's the first question. Like, what? Well, apparently they're pulling out now because nobody knew. So, I've seen this in my market here, and I have a buddy, Tim. He wants me to go. He's in the off-road motocross riding, and Gas and excuse me, is like TMZ or TMC or something like that. Is another big brand, and he goes on about the CC engines and and I've had a lot of comments on my channel like, you can get a motorcycle for the price of a $5,000 bike. I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of crazy. You can do that, considering it's a combustion engine and all that versus just a U engine. But seeing the Yamaha ending its e-bike sales, and I was gonna do kind of an interview, go to my local gas dealer here, and I've seen they had mountain bikes, e-bike mountain bikes in the racks, and I was gonna go on. I'm intrigued, like, not that I'm into that by any means, or that's, what I do, but I'm just kind of intrigued why and what are their customers? Like, they're selling motorcycles right next to a mountain bike, e-bike. So what was the successes? Are they still trying to grow it? Is there going to go from here? Or is this whiplash is just like Yamaha is going, oh, hands off? Or we're negating that. Turned out to be, it was a good idea at first, but it turned out to be bad. We're going to stick to her. The company itself might be having some hardships too. Really haven't dived into the customer. I just looked at the title and went, oh, interesting. Because yeah, Gas has a e-mountain bike as well. And who's making them? Not know. Who's the battery? Who's the motor? All those things. That's what I was going to kind of do a feature and see where's this going, because it's kind of the e-bike bandwagon with a lot of these companies. They're looking, it's like, oh, we have a customer that may be able to accommodate by using our branding. So business is business, right? In any case, I found that kind of interesting that they're pulling out. Oh, okay. I got a question here on my tool wall. All right. Oh, the T handle on your tool wall on the right of your chain ring sizer. What is a T handle tool? Oh, this guy? This is basically, it's a bearing press. It's just a cheaper bearing press. I got this for doing bottom bracket bearings. You can do small headset bearings too if the head tube's not too long. But that's basically what it is, different fittings for bearings for the BB. So yeah, that's what that is. You'll use this tool. I've only used this tool like 4 times since I bought it 2 years ago. So you don't need to invest into the Park $300, $200 BB tool press. This one has the fitting pieces on there, or you can buy, like I just bought here, the fittings from Park that fit on this. But in any case, if you're going to do a Bonnebraga press or a headset press, you can go and do the inexpensive knockoff ones, but you're only going to be using it once or twice. And it just has to be, only has to work once or twice. And other than that, it just sits on the tool wall right there. Another outdated tool that's not used very much is the other 2 T-handle ones. This is a dropout alignment tool. Basically, this fits in the dropout of a steel frame or fork, and then you could straighten it out. It used to be pretty common. I bought the Park ones because I was dumb. Because I've only used this like twice, and this is the first part, and I was just trying to make my wall blue. Yeah, so if I get a vintage steel frame that you can use these, you can't use them on aluminum because aluminum just does not like to be cold bend. But you can check the drops and see if they're out of alignment, that kind of thing. And then, look at the new, everything is like a through axle, so another obsolete. I have, next week I will feature some obsolete tools that are fun for steel old frames. Next week, I still have them in the box. I bought them. I'm just looking for the gauge, and they don't make it anymore. And I think I vetted one in Denver. I'm going to try to pick it up this week so I can show you how, tool time. In any case, yeah, that's kind of fun stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can go with Park tools, they're like the snap-on tools, and you can go down the rabbit hole of spinning way, I mean, they're good stuff. They're good stuff. But vet only what you're really going to need to use on a more regular basis, even in the shop. Is some of these tools you only will use once or twice a year. Do you need the super expensive one? All depends what you're working on. If it warrants it. Okay, if I was making enough money and if you guys were like tipping the hell out of me to buy tools, I'd get some really cool stuff. But don't do that. I mean, I like tools like everybody else, but I mean, it's just one of those things that you want to be smart about it. Let's put it that way. So if you're building up your own home shop, just to work on your own stuff, it's nice to have Park stuff, but if, honestly, get an inexpensive kit and start there, and then work up, because if you wear out a tool, or if a tool's like, I've used this more often, like a cone wrench or whatever, then go ahead and buy that Park tool, the more expensive tool, and then now filter those more used tools. And if you see on my tool wall, how I have it laid out is so far, I'll go once a year, I'll rearrange these, but typically This is what I use the most in arm's reach because it's more of an efficiency thing. The more technical stuff gets further pushed away. So what you see here, Allen wrenches, files, not so much open box wrenches anymore. Cones is a little bit out of reach, but it's more like your bits, your screwdrivers, torques, hammers, pedal wrench, that kind of stuff. This is if you're going to invest in a tool, maybe this is the one, a derailleur hanger alignment tool. This thing right here. This is, I use almost on every bike. This will make, I've gone down rabbit holes of trying to get a bike to shift and like, damn it, what is not right? It's like either you place the cable and you do all that, and you go to the alignment. Now, this is what I check now first, so I don't have that problem. But that hanger, if it's off a little bit, that rear derailleur is not gonna shift for crap. This is the thing that will save, and even, yeah, it's more expensive, and you can get the cheaper version of this too, but 9 times out of 10, if the bike falls over on the right side, it may knock that derailleur just a little bit out of whack, and it's not going to shift incorrectly. This tool, I was on my last event ride. I did a mechanical support for the Buffalo CSU or CU thing. There was 2 bikes that had e-shifting, and the Di2 was acting weird, and I was like, oh, that derailleur's all out of whack, and she knew. She fell over or crashed or something, and I popped it off, and I realigned it. Like, warning, when you use this tool though, that derailleur hanger might snap. Keep that in mind. Let me repeat that again. That derailleur hanger that's on the frame might snap when you torque that, because what that is basically a soft piece of aluminum, and it's designed to break before your frame does. That's why, so when you use this, keep in mind you might be buying a $20, $30 derailleur hanger that bolts in there. But this what aligns it to straighten it out. I do know some Treks that are super brittle. You just put this thing on there, it pops, break. But anyway, back to the story. I was able to line that up. And once I got that derailleur back into place, like the Di2, like realized like, oh, we're back into shifting again, and it shifted just fine. Another bike was the SRAM, which is weird. You know, did one of both or both. But the SRAM, same thing. The guy was like, it didn't fall over, it didn't crash or anything. He's like, well, it's bent. So I don't know where, how, I don't know. I don't care. But let me put this tool on there and line that, because you can torque that alignment, you know, the alignment on there. And once you get that aligned, his shifting was great, and he was off as a happy camper. So this is probably the one that I would put a little bit more weight and money into. The rest of the stuff I would play with used and kind of go from there. That kind of thing. Scott, thank you for the little tip there. Appreciate it. Not that I'm doing this for that specifically, but thank you all the same. Anyway, back to yeah, you go down. Yeah, you can get tools. I mean, anybody that likes working on stuff likes tools. And I'll just buy stuff because I just want them. I've been looking for retro tools, like the older school stuff. Man, this is what gets me. And if anybody's here local, when Trek was starting to do acquisitions of bike shops, Lee Cyclery is the one I worked at. That was acquisition, sold to Trek. And they basically, this is one of the first ones that Trek was doing. They just threw everything in a dumpster. One of those things that were in the dumpster, and then two of the locations had it, was a classic Campanoli box, about this big, the tools, thrown in a dumpster. Thousands of dollars value in a Campanoli press. It was like the ultimate beautiful thing. But in any case, that's one of those things like, oh, curse me. Yeah, one of the mechanics, I'm sure, snagged that. And you're not going to fess up, are you? Any case, yeah, that's one of those weird acquisitions. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of tools out there. Read up in the, I mean, you can buy stuff off of Amazon. Just read the comments on them, like the product comments. That'll help you if it's like, okay, does it work for this? All right, fine. I'll spend that 30 bucks versus the 300 bucks. You know, well, it's not that extreme, but you know where I'm going with this. You can get there pretty quick. Yeah, those camping sets were like gold bars. I mean, looking at the value of those, like on eBay, it's like, whoa, somebody just went into early retirement. Well, probably not, but you know, it's one of those things, like pretty nuts, that kind of thing. All righty, what else we got here? The topic news. You know, did you know, like Fox Shock and there's also Fox Clothing, which are two different companies? So, Fox Clothing, I think, Factory Clothing, I think. Or no, is that the Shocks? Anyway, they had some problems. Anyway, that's in one of those articles. The other one, what was the other one that intrigued me besides the Pro Closet? The other weird one, I would say, there's news about Giant, but I don't think it's Giant bikes. Oh, that's what it was. Okay, we talked about Cambria, you know, taking up the Colorado Cyclists and Planet Cycler. The other one is REI is now going to be a basically service center, warranty center for Canyon Bikes. And if you don't know Canyon Bikes is a direct consumer sale company. They've been using VeloFix, I believe, to do some of their work or build-ups or whatever to help customers out when they get direct to consumer. And they have listed in the article something like 66 other independent bike shops in the United States, various sizes, I'm sure, of course. When Canyon hit the market, Trek and Specialized and Giant basically lost their pants. They freaked out, ran around with their heads on fire. Reason being is they were selling bikes basically direct to the consumer, number one, which is before they were doing it. And it was just the same quality, if not better quality, of Trek and Specialized carbons and mountain bikes and all that. So when you looked at the price points, it was like $200-300 cheaper. So of course you're like, I can turn a tool or two, I'm gonna buy a Canyon instead of a Trek. So when they were building up their market in Europe, it's a German-based company, they were doing really well, and Trek saw this coming over and Specialized too, and when they hit, they totally panicked and freaked out. Therefore, it's right about the same time where Trek started buying a whole bunch of retail stores. Specialized, you know, the interesting bit about Specialized is one of the people that left Canyon that was in charge of that direct consumer actually is one of the main guys at Specialized now. And as that guy got into place, I'll have to look at the article and the name again, but it don't matter here nor there, that's what led Specialized going to direct to consumers about 2 years ago, which basically totally everybody lost their shit over. Dealers were totally undercutted. The Trek dealers kind of undercutted. They're trying to make it a little more softer and better for the Trek independent dealers, but Trek also has its own stores. So seeing how Canyon is like, oh, we kind of do need to have a service center, and who best than REI? They have stores nationwide, right? They all have already a decent bike department. It wasn't like Sports Authority where, you know, or even Performance Bike. They have a better support staff department. It is a little bike shop inside of REI. But Canyon is basically going in bed with them, a partnership that they'll service their bikes. I don't think you'll see Canyon bikes in their stores, but you definitely see some Trek product in REI, oddly enough, and some Electra bikes, which is the electric brand, which is owned by Trek. Yeah, and now I think they have Cannondale, which is part of Pond. Anyways, it's a whole soap opera, mass can of worms with REI. But locally, local news, this is hilarious about REI. Apparently they blacklisted like several thousand people from returning products. So if you buy it from REI, they were not going to let you return it because you're fraudulent returners or whatever, return too much stuff or any of those kind of things. The first time I've heard of like openly a big box chain going, nope, we're not going to take returns because you just abused it. Yeah, that didn't go over well. Apparently, this one lady they featured on this this story locally here spent like 10,000, $7,000 to $10,000 at REI in the last 5 years or something like that. Really outdoor enthusiast. Well, just to give you a snapshot, Colorado is Sue's outdoors. I mean, we're the outdoor mecca for kayaking, hiking, snowshoeing, snowboarding, biking, everything outdoors. So REI, this is the battleground of outdoor sporting, right? It's just like one of those things. And this person locally spent that much money there, and she got basically you returned too much stuff, so you can't return stuff here anymore. So yeah, and it's not like she has other options like she does. I mean, there's Dick's Sporting Goods, you have Shields, you have Sportsman's Warehouse, you have, I mean, there's so many big box battle going on here. It's just nuts. But anyway, I wanted to talk about REI, which they do. They have their co-op brand, which is their house brand, which used to be Navara. If you wanted to not know about that, I just told you. And they are a micro little bike shop. They're switching over doing skis and skis and snowboards. I don't know if they do that or just more snowshoes and I don't know, that kind of stuff. Any case. And they did open up another location here in Loveland where I live. So they have another one. They have two in a pretty stone flow and connection. We do have a crossroads, which is like I-25 and Eisenhower 34, which goes up to Estes, if you ever heard of Estes Park. That crossroads has become like this huge mecca outdoor salesman warehouse place because they have Dick's, they have Shields, they have the Trek stores, they have the Specialized stores, they have REI just moved out there. Apparently, we're going to get a Bass Pro Shop there. So, in other words, that translates to me is if I ever needed to drive to Denver, I avoid that whole fucking mess. Oh yeah, and they have an In-N-Out burger. Yeah, apparently screwed up a whole bunch of traffic for a while. Any case, that's our local craziness. But yeah, the REI Canyon, authorized service partner is interesting thing. Okay, so yeah, what were we seeing? We alluded to we don't know where it's going to go from here. Well, kind of do. Give you a teaser here when I talk to John Bradley next time. So he brought up the chaos and was really kind of hands up. We don't know where we're going to go from here. Well, what you're going to see is you're going to see probably another handful of bigger companies go under and their names being bought. And you're going to see sometimes random companies that you never knew to be in that industry being a venture capitalists. This is nothing new. Schwinn's gone through it, Mongoose, GT, all of them, when they failed, they got bought and sold and whatever and that kind of thing. So that's where you're going to see a lot more of the big names. Will Trek go down that? Highly not, because they're a pretty big company, but they got to do some huge adjustments, cut down some stores, cut down some SKUs. That's how they released this year. Specialized, going to do the same. They're going to eventually have to start bringing in some entry-level product that's price pointed correct, not be so expensive. Hopefully we'll see that, but there's smaller micro companies are eating that up alive, like Poseidon Bikes. You can find yourself $1,000 less bikes there, new, direct to your house. So then the other big fish in this is Pond Holdings, and I've talked about them before. They own Santa Cruz, Savello, Cannondale. They also do carry the Schwinn and GT and Mongoose. They own 50 different bike companies. They're big. What they are going to do is probably going to be interesting if they do anything. They own shops too. They went underneath the Mike's Bikes umbrella out of Cali. Specialized they don't use Specialized name, they use InCycle and some other previous names for their storefronts, but they are corporate owned. Trek basically is the only one that's full frontal, like we're just a Trek store. But you're going to see a change in dynamics there. The mom and pop shops, if they don't have a strong niche or they don't have strong pocketbooks because they've been damaged in the last 2 years horribly, that between the manufacturers, problems with inventory and all that, down the line of the market has just changed on them. They're going to have to do some creative adjustments to keep going forward. But the ones I've talked to they're going to be fine, but they're just going to be borrowing more money to kind of help get over this hump, that kind of scenario. Little mom and pop shops, that's where the pinch is going to be. Your little small shop on the corner, if they don't own their own building, and if their landlord is a prick, they're done. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. The overhead is going to kill them. Overhead is the building and the employees. They're pretty much all their employees go, so what's left is the buildings now. So they're going to go down this horrible rabbit hole, unfortunately. So what you're going to see at the end of the day, in the next couple of years, you're going to have a reskinned, revamped companies like Planet Cyclery, the Pros Closet, and that kind of thing. Then you'll see the bigger chain stores that are privately owned to get out of it, but they're going to be doing a little more warm hug. I mean, they're going to change their footprints. They're going to make it more inviting to come in, more service oriented, that kind of thing from everything. The corporate stores are going to be less of them, and that's what you're going to see in a big chunk, in a big wave of the hand. That's where you're going to see. What other thing you're going to see is a whole lot of me's. Not just in the YouTube realm. You might see them too, like Bike Farmers, one big one that you guys watch, bigger channel than me, landed on the scene at the same time. He is doing really well. He has definitely proven the case for a lot of us do what we do, but on like YouTube and social media. I've seen a lot of different ones on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook-ish. But we're all leveraging those. We've been leveraging those in the last 2 years because we need to find something too to help us out. That's how I landed on doing the YouTube thing, is just to validate the stuff that I sell. And then now here we are today. We're having a great conversation about bikes and industry and everything in between the stands instead of between the two ferns, if you know my reference. In any case, so you're going to see a lot more micro shops out of the garage. Okay, is the infrastructure to set up to help bike shops in the garage succeed? To some level, yes, because as a service, mobile service is already kind of branched in that direction. So they've gotten vendors to sell to them and that kind of thing. I'm finally at a point where I need to start looking for those parts vendors, not like brands for like Checkers, but no, they'll never sell bikes to me. But nor do I want really bikes. I just need tools and chains and cables and housing and things like that, right? To bring the cost down there. I can buy them pretty close to cost on the eBay and wherever else, like Jensen's USA and that kind of thing now, currently. But leveraging next step forward iteration would be that. So for shops my size, once they become a little more subjective of selling to us out of a garage, because I have retail insurance, I have service insurance, I have the business license, I pay the sales tax. I'm everything as a bike shop without the brick and mortar building. So if you have those micro shops out of their garages or mobile, those are going to be more popping up and more servicing you. The only thing for them though is to be able to branch out and exceed, because you only so many bikes you can tune up a day, right? Only so many bikes you can repair a day. So many things you can sell online a day as an individual. You're gonna be seeing them on YouTube too, or whatever social media platform is the hottest, latest thing. Reason being is this helps us bring out our brand. At some point, it will help us share our story, and obviously, you guys like watching us work on stuff, and maybe come learn some things or what have you. It depends on the personality. I know the bike farmer is a little more crotchety, so that's fine. I'm not going that route. I'm not going to be the angry mechanic, that kind of thing. I have my various versions of anger, but hey, I like bikes, so that puts me more in a happy place. Any case, that's where I see my crystal ball. You'll see a lot more of little micro shops like us, and at some point, we're going to get together. And we're going to make I wouldn't say union or a co-op, maybe like a co-op of micro shops where they could be vetted for insurance and purposes like, oh, I live here, where's my micro shop? They're going to be here. Okay, they're all appointment based. That's great. I'll set up an appointment, drop my bike off, get worked on. I meet the mechanic that's working on my bike, or I'm buying the parts, or I'm buying the mechanic or buying the bike from that person or what have you. In any case, that's what I'm going to see pretty much in the future for me. And on that note, hit 7777. That's not a phone number. It's the number of subscribers that I hit, which is not the huge variable metrics that we're shooting for as YouTubers, but that is a milestone. And the reason why 7, well, I was born on the 7th, so that's where I like the 7777. So if I get 3 7s in Las Vegas next time, that'll be even better. You might see a lot more tools on the wall that happen. But in any case, another big milestone that I came across, and thank you for you watching this. It's much appreciated. This is my 2nd year actively working on YouTube. In November is the 2nd year, and I've hit over 100,000 hours of view. So if you guys have watched 100,000 hours of me doing this, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And within 2 years, that's mind-blowing to me. That's pretty big. That's pretty good metrics. But in any case, wanted to share that and thank you for this. Thanks for hanging out with the garage. I'm going to cut this out. I got to work and eat lunch and go sell a bike frame. But in any case, thank you for hanging out with me in the garage. Until next time, come back with some questions. I'm going to make this a more of a usual thing on Tuesdays at 10 my time. We'll just turn it on and go and see how long we go. And, pop in some questions and that kind of thing. And I appreciate you watching. If it's nice in your neck of woods, please go for a ride. Again, from the garage, have a wonderful day.